Hello everybody. In this video, I'll try to understand what happens if Jupiter is present in purvaphalguni nakshatra. So in order to understand that, first we need to understand what is Jupiter and what is purvaphalguni nakshatra. And in Vedic astrology literature, Jupiter is always represented with wisdom, knowledge and expansion. It is a planet of righteousness, dharma basically, being the lord of the natural ninth house, that is Sagittarius. So it also represents teachers and gurus. The teaching abilities of a person can be known by Jupiter's energy in the horoscope. And Jupiter is always about expansion and growth, spirituality, ethics, morality, wealth, prosperity. If your Jupiter is functionally benefic, it gives you a lot of fortune and blessings. So Jupiter always try to expand whatever it touches. That is a fundamental energy of Jupiter. And what is purvaphalguni nakshatra, the Shukra nakshatra, the second Shukra nakshatra? The first Venus nakshatra is Bharani, the second one is purvaphalguni. It's a Venusian nakshatra, so Venusian energies it has. So the qualities of purvaphalguni, it's generally in Vedic literature, it is represented by a bed symbolism or front legs of a bed. So the symbolism is mainly because of the pleasure this particular nakshatra seeks, or the pleasure it gives to others, or it's a pleasure oriented nakshatra, right? It's about relaxation, it's about creativity, right? So if you observe the soul journey, the Magha nakshatra is where a soul is getting some kind of victory, and now the soul wants some kind of relaxation because, let us say, you worked hard and finally you achieved something, and now you want some pleasure, you want that relaxation, right? So as purvaphalguni is that relaxation, is that pleasure, is that it's always about creativity, it's about love and romance, it's about art and beauty, it's about enjoyment of life, right? So Venusian energy basically, and the deity of this nakshatra is Bhaga. Bhaga is one of the Adityas, and Bhaga basically represents the prosperity, enjoyment, sharing of wealth and fortune. That is the fundamental energy of purvaphalguni. So it's always about enjoying the fruits of life, because Magha is already something like, I achieved some royal throne, now I want to enjoy. That is the behavior of purvaphalguni. I achieved something, now I want to enjoy. I want pleasure. I want, I love creativity. I love romance. I love art and beauty. Love enjoyment in life. I like relaxation, pleasure. So this is my philosophy of life. That's what purvaphalguni always says. So it's a pleasure oriented, a very luxury oriented nakshatra. Now Jupiter is in purvaphalguni nakshatra. Now what happens when Jupiter is in purvaphalguni? Jupiter is always about wisdom, spirituality, growth, expansion, blessings, fortune, right? This is Jupiter. And Venus is always about pleasure, it's about luxury, it's about relationships, being a Shukra nakshatra, means a Venus nakshatra. So these two planets represent the philosophy. If you observe, the philosophy is different between these two planets, because Jupiter always says righteousness is very much important. It's a dharma, it always talks about dharma. Jupiter always talks about dharma, but Venus always talks about kama. Dharma, artha, moksha, this dharma, artha, kama, moksha we say, right? Dharma, artha, kama and moksha. These are the chaturvidha purusharthas, means for a purusha, these are the four things that a purusha has to do in his life. So the dharma, the artha, the kama and the moksha, right? So Jupiter always talks about dharma, the righteousness, but Venus always talks about kama. Jupiter always talks about knowledge, and Venus talks about pleasure. Jupiter is a guru basically. Is fundamentally, if you see a teacher, if you see a great professor, if you see a kind of a fundamental spiritual energy person, or a kind of philosopher, a righteous person, that is all Jupiter energy. Whereas Venus is a lover basically, right? So Jupiter's energy is always spiritual wisdom. I want wisdom. I talk about spiritual wisdom. That's what Jupiter says. Whereas Venus says, I talk about material enjoyment. Right? So when Jupiter is in is in this particular purvaphalguni nakshatra, and we know the fundamental thing in the Vedic astrology, Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So Jupiter automatically is going to enhance the qualities of purvaphalguni, that is luxury, romance, creativity, artistic expression, or social life. So all these things of the native would be enhanced. The luxury of the native, the romance, the romantic behavior of the native, the creativity of the native, right? So when Jupiter is in purvaphalguni nakshatra, the person can become a very great person. He can achieve great heights in the creative industry. It can be anything. Take any name of creative industry, the person can achieve great heights. So such a person can become a kind of patron of arts, or a kind of great creative teacher, or a great entertainer with wisdom mainly, and also a philosopher who enjoys life, right? That's what I can see here. So it's a kind of, you need to blend the wisdom of Jupiter with the beauty of Venus, right? If you blend the wisdom of Jupiter with beauty of Venus in different proportions, you can see there's different people coming, right, into your mind. So that is Jupiter in this purvaphalguni energy. So the person can have a lot of interest in arts and creativity. So because purvaphalguni is strongly connected to creativity, Jupiter can give lot of interest in music, right? Because that is an art, and literature or poetry or cinema, fine arts, fashion, cultural knowledge, whatever you say, all the qualities of purvaphalguni are going to be enhanced, right? So it's not just about Venus is being enhanced, Venusian energy is enhanced. It's Jupiter can also add its philosophy and depth to this. It's a kind of philosophy and artist, philosopher and artist mixed, or spiritual poet. If you see a spiritual poet, Jupiter and purvaphalguni can be a spiritual poet, because purvaphalguni is about arts, music, poetry. So Jupiter is about spirituality. It's not a deep spirituality like Ketu, but Jupiter is a kind of a fundamental spiritual personality. So you can see a spiritual poet with this placement, and teacher of arts, somebody teaching all arts, teacher of arts you can see, a cultural historian you can find, kind of. That's what you can find. See, purvaphalguni gives magnetic charm also, right? And as Jupiter is sitting here, you can see when a person is having the Jupiter energy with some magnetic charm, what happens? Generally, people trust the person very easily, right? People like to listen to this particular people, this particular native, and it gives natural charisma, right? Basically, that's what I want to tell. So something like they can get social respect automatically with Jupiter and purvaphalguni, right? So that is what I can see. And Jupiter is a kind of a teacher, a speaker, and this purvaphalguni is about social life also. So you can see a public speaker with this energy, you can see a spiritual entertainer with this energy, a charismatic teacher, right? Some teacher, we all like some teacher because of the charming quality, or the speaking quality, or entertaining quality, or artistic abilities. We like some teachers. That teacher is Jupiter in purvaphalguni. And what about the enjoyment, the desire of this purvaphalguni? It's a pleasure oriented nakshatra. So, but Jupiter mainly talks about dharma instead of this kama. So Jupiter changes it slightly, you can say. Instead of empty pleasure, or instead of always seeking pleasure in something, the native may seek meaningful pleasure, meaningful relationship, a cultured lifestyle. It's a kind of balanced, right? A kind of refined enjoyment. The enjoyment is not just in, just pleasure it's not just seeking pleasure, seeking more and more pleasure. It's a kind of intellectual romance, I would say. It's a kind of refined enjoyment. So beauty and wisdom together, you can feel it here, right? So the Venusian qualities, right, like always seeking more and more pleasure, instead of that, you can say the Jupiter is adding its own flavor to this particular Venusian qualities. And the deity of purvaphalguni is Bhaga. Bhaga is always, in Vedic literature, you can see Bhaga is always represented wherever the sharing of wealth and fortune comes into the picture. So sharing wealth, sharing fortune, right? That is all about Bhaga. So Jupiter here, then just imagine a person with Jupiter and purvaphalguni. He's the kind of generous person. He can share wealth, he can share fortune. The person likes to host gatherings because the person likes to share his or her wealth or fortune. So shares knowledge, right? Because Jupiter has a lot of knowledge, and purvaphalguni likes to share the wealth that it has or the fortune that it has. So this Jupiter in purvaphalguni shares knowledge, shares resources fundamentally, right? Helps friends socially. Sometimes they act like a generous king, right? So it's a good placement. It's not at all a bad placement. Okay. But even though it is a good placement, let us say Saturn is watching this Jupiter or Mars is watching this Jupiter. See, Saturn and Mars, irrespective of whether they are functionally benefic or malefic to your ascendant, their aspects are always malefic. And let us say if this Jupiter is on Rahu-Ketu axis, with its affliction. When a planet is present on Rahu-Ketu axis, we say the planet is afflicted. That means its behavior is changed, right? It may become more or it may become lesser. It's a kind of abnormality when a planet is present on Rahu-Ketu axis. So, if this particular Jupiter has some malefic aspect or if it is afflicted, there are some problems we can identify here. So, for that problems, we need to follow some remedies, or we may need to go through some kind of treatments, right? So what can be the possible issues with Jupiter and this pleasure oriented purvaphalguni? So the excessive indulgence is one thing, right? One of the negative qualities if this Jupiter is present on Rahu-Ketu axis or if it is watched by Saturn or Mars. And as purvaphalguni is something like it is coming after Magha, and it has a feeling that now I achieved something, but I need a lot of pleasure. Now I want pleasure, right? That is a main energy of this purvaphalguni. I want pleasure. So because of abnormality, what happens is it wants some excessive indulgence. Excessive indulgence is one of the patterns you can observe here, right? The indulgence becomes a bit excessive here. And then laziness. Purvaphalguni is a bit lazy because it achieved something. Now it wants to rest, it wants to relax. That's a kind of laziness. So laziness becomes more if this Jupiter is afflicted or having some malefic aspect. Over romantic behavior or luxury addiction or moral compromise, right? Because pleasure may overpower wisdom here. That's what the problem, right? If it is afflicted or if it has some malefic aspect. Now, the relationships, if you talk about, because Jupiter especially represents your husband for female horoscopes, so you can say, if in a female horoscope, if I see Jupiter in Magha nakshatra, and if there is no malefic aspect and Rahu Ketu axis is not afflicting this Jupiter, now I can say the female native's partner is wise, or is the partner, or the native would be teaching through some relationships, right? Or it's something like the native may get a teaching job through relationship, kind of, or attraction to some kind of cultured partners. The native may love some kind of cultured religious partner, because Jupiter is a bit cultured and religious. So these can be the expectations with respect to relationship, because Jupiter represents husband in a female horoscope. So, and also the native may seek some kind of romance with some intellectual connection. Just normal romance the native may not like, because Jupiter is in purvaphalguni. The native may like romance with some intellectual connection. And I can say the people are, see, Venus adds some diplomacy, right? Venusian energy. So as Jupiter is in purvaphalguni, I can say the person can be a diplomatic leader, or the person may have some charming authority, or the person can be a respected mentor. So people generally follow them because of their charm. Jupiter in purvaphalguni gets some kind of charm, and they also have some kind of kindness, because they like to share. If it is not afflicted, if this Jupiter is not afflicted, they like to share, right? So they get kindness, they have some kindness, they have wisdom, they have generosity. So people follow them generally, right? So they have to learn how to balance pleasure and wisdom in the life. So the soul learns all this, enjoying life without losing morality, balancing this Venus and Jupiter energies. This is what the soul would learn if this placement is present in the horoscope. Now, something like living beautifully at the same time ethically as well, right? Because Jupiter is present, it wants ethics. That purvaphalguni wants pleasure. So balance, there is a balance if it is not afflicted or not watched by Saturn and Mars. This is the overall thing. It's a kind of good placement. This is the overall energy of this particular placement, I can say. So thanks for watching this video.